Over the years, our organization has regularly advocated for the development of museum policies around the world. We've tried to help member states to strengthen their capacity towards the protection of museums, and importantly, prepared museums and museum specialists to address complex challenges of our times with innovation. This year, the International Day of Museums offers a dialogue more specifically on the future of museums, recover and reimagine. And as we look ahead, I think it's a good time to take a moment to acknowledge the outstanding contributions of museum professionals who we unfortunately lost to this pandemic. Since its onset, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted both the creative economy and the social dialogue associated with museums. To measure and mitigate the impact on the global museum sector, UNESCO has conducted 2 comprehensive global surveys with findings that we published in May 2020 and also more recently in April 2021. Some of the alarming statistics that they include indicate that closures and restrictions globally have resulted in plummeted attendance for museums with a 70% decline on average. There's also been a slump of 40 to 60% in museum revenue compared with 2019. Many museums have turned towards a hybrid approach, and that's what we are going to be discussing today, and also the use of information and communication technologies to cope with the impact of the pandemic. Here, I must make a special mention in particular of the Bihar Museum Biennale, a pioneering model for India and beyond, and of course also the Kochi Museums Biennale in Kerala. Both have tackled the crisis head-on and also, I would say, elevated the museum aesthetic through online immersive experiences. But it's just the beginning, and many challenges lie ahead, as we know. Not to forget the steep global digital divide, which remains particularly concerning. Equal access to advanced technologies, high-speed connections, specialized platforms, digitization of content and collections, all interspersed with complex social debates in a vast country like India, require many conversations like the one we're having today. Ultimately, museums are hubs of narratives and multiple voices, and we must look towards continuing these cultural conversations digitally, however, without leaving the local communities and disadvantaged groups behind. The potential of museums in facilitating our progress on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals has been well recognized, and an inclusive, informed, and participatory museum policy in the digital age is probably the first step towards pandemic recovery in this area. We must harness the relationships between the economic, educational, and various facets of museums as we prepare emerging museum professionals for renewed cultural dialogue. So all this to say that I'm confident that today's panelists and obviously the vast expertise they bring will offer much insight in tackling some of these challenges, especially in the context of India. And I would like to thank you for giving me a chance to open the floor for these timely discussions.
So thank you for those very inspiring and opening remarks, Mr. Eric Walt. Indeed, these are most relevant points considering the current context. We will now move on to the next, the main panel discussion, which is moderated by Dr. Alka Pandey. And I will introduce our moderator, Alka Pandey. He is an art historian and curator with several degrees in art history, including a postdoc in critical art theory from the University of London. Alka has authored numerous books and curated many national and international exhibitions. She is recipient of the Charles Wallace Award, Knight of the Order of Arts and Letters by French government, Australian Indian Council Special Award, L'Oreal Paris Women Award, and Amrita Shergill Samman. Currently, Dr. Pandey is a consultant art advisor and curator of the Visual Arts Gallery at the India Habitat Center, New Delhi. May I request Dr. Alka Pandey if you can start the panel discussion, introducing the panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Shikha, for the wonderful introduction. And since we've already are all kind of tuned in, I will go straight into the panel and say that on World Museum Day, there are lots of people talking, and we are very happy that we too have got a nice slot in this and a lovely panel. Thank you, Eric, for a very, very interesting and very relevant and succinct opening remarks, and mentioning in particular that museums are hubs of narratives and multiple views, and that's what it is. On behalf of my co-hosts, the Bihar Museum and the nodal officers here, Anjani Kumar Singh, UNESCO, which is Eric Falt was here and made the opening remarks, the DRONAH Foundation, Shikha Jain. I'm delighted to welcome all of you to this discussion on the hybrid museum. We are all preparing to face the new world order with or without masks. We cannot ignore the new ways of presentation, viewership, and connoisseurship. In India in particular, it will be a while before museums will be pulsating with audiences in physical spaces. And I think even in countries where the population is vaccinated and life is becoming normal, the normal is not going to be the old normal pre-pandemic, but a new normal post-pandemic where the physical and the virtual will walk hand in hand. And this is going to be the hybrid model. This is what the hybridity is going to be all about. Even though personally, I am not a great votary of the virtual, because the experience of rasa or the rasa anubhuti or the emotive experience is not replicated through the virtual can only enhance it. I have stated this clearly in my essay in the Marg volume 73, where I've written an essay called Museums and Hybrid Futures, and I argue about the case that the virtual can only enhance the physical. And I'm just going to read 3 lines from that. Here is the Marg, which is on performances, that museums the world over are stirring. Like statues coming to life, they are turning into interactive in nature using virtual reality technologies and other methods to make learning experiential. I like to go back to the old Chitrasalas, the ancient art of viewership in India. As early as in the 8th century, we had the poet Bhavabhuti, who in his Uttama Ramacharitam mentions the enactment of the Ramayana in the painted chamber full of images of Ram, Sita, and Lakshman. Museums in India find their ancestors in the Chitrashalas, or halls of paintings, which used to be an important component of royal palaces in ancient and medieval India. Those which were the royal palaces were opened in the evenings for the Nagaraka or the educated citizens to delight in aesthetic pleasure, while separate Chitrashalas were meant for the women in the harem. Often every queen and princess had her own Chitrashala or her own museum, which also happened to be in their sleeping apartment, as if they would wake up to the sight of beautiful pictures, and that was considered to be auspicious. The second type was a private Chitrashala, among which the best ones were found in the houses of courtesans and represented themes of Shringar or erotic love, Hasya, joy, and Shanta, peace. The third type of Chitrashala, or the public one, had painted frescoes representing all kinds of subjects. So these Chitrasalas, or pre-modern museums of ancient India, were the embodiment of the idea of making an appreciative home for art in India, and it can be traced back to the Natya Shastra of Bharat, who wrote the Natya Shastra, which was also known as the fifth Veda, a treatise which first expounded the notions of rasa, or the theory of emotions, which was centering around 9 rasas. Over the years, with modernity coming in, the museums developed in the order of archaeological, anthropological, ethnographical museums, museums and galleries, difficult heritage, dark tourism and migration museum, historical houses, cultural museums, museums without walls, natural history museums, science and technology, sites and memorials, and small museums. And we also have adaptive museums, something which Shikha Jain and DRONAH have been working, and I've been working with them. This is an approach for conservation of historic structures, for reusing them in some way. Though 70 to 80% of adaptive reuse is of public buildings, museum is the most logical, appropriate muse. So we have a large number of historic buildings in India converted into museums. But later we will see Guillaume talk about his museum, which has been constructed as an absolute modern repository on the bank, which is actually literally going into the water. Today, from being repositories of historical objects, museums are becoming democratic, technologically sophisticated spaces that provoke reflections and critical inquiry. Examples of these museums I shall be showing you. This is a museum called the Virasat-e-Khalsa in Punjab in India. This is the inside of the way the museum is showing works of art purely through a digital experience. This is another museum, which is literally a virtual museum. It is the Sarmaya Museum, and this is the showing of an exhibition which is going through virtually. This is the portrait of a nation, which is 19th century photography from the subcontinent. I was speaking to Paul Abraham, and he himself is not a great votary of the virtual, but he said this is the best way of communication. So if it is not a museum you go to, the museum will come to you. A curated repository of Indian art, artifacts, and living traditions from the subcontinent, it is India's first digital archive, and objects fall into categories of numismatics, cartography, photography, engravings, modern art, living traditions, and rare books. In the hybrid museum, the physical and the virtual realms need to go hand in hand to support and enhance each other's roles in a symbiotic manner, whether in programming or audience engagement. Over the past 1 year, we have seen the immense potential of the digital space, but the challenge ahead for museums of the future is in reconfiguring physical display and layout. Several museums across the world are seamlessly weaving technology into the physical space and creating a whole new learning experience for viewers. The Atelier de Lumière in Paris, France, is one of the forerunners in integrating technology into viewers' interaction within a physical space. Next slide, please. Yeah. The digital center that uncovered the real beauty and possibility of an immersive experience with Vincent van Gogh exhibition in 2019 by engulfing the space with massive screens of the digitized Van Gogh works. The institution crafted a unique experience for visitors, transporting them to the heart of the art while also metaphorically elaborating on the limitless world within an artwork. This year, they're going to be doing something on Salvador Dali. Museums have been changing for a while now, with augmented and virtual realities, driving the audience response, interactive in nature. Such experiential museums make learning layered, rhizomatic, with conversations and collaborations taking place between multiple players. This is MONA in Tasmania, Australia, which stands for the Museum of Old and New Art. The museum houses over 1,900 artistic works from the David Walsh's private collection. Notable works in its inaugural exhibition monism included Australia's largest modernistic artwork, Sydney Nolan's snake mural, displayed publicly for the first time in Australia. This is the background against which I wanted to base the panel today. And now I'm going to introduce you to my really very, very visionary panel, a panel which is diverse, inclusive, and in their own areas, they have been doing excellent work. So I have with me Shri Anjani Kumar Singh, Nodal Officer of the Bihar Museum, who's also the advisor to the government of Bihar. He set up the Bihar Museum, one of the I would call it the splendors of modern India. And whenever the pandemic opens, I think he will be very happy to invite us to Bihar and take us around the museum himself. He's very passionate about it. And I would be requesting him to speak about the making of Bihar Museum, what was the idea behind it, how is he thinking of opening up the Bihar Museum after the lockdown in Bihar. We also then have Dr. Venu Vasudev, the Additional Chief Secretary, Government of Kerala. He is another visionary. He was the Director General of the National Museum in New Delhi. And while he was the Director General, he opened up the museum, brought out the treasures of the museum, did brilliant curated shows, invited people from India and abroad, and went on bringing treasures out of storage and showing it to the public. Today, he's very busy with setting up new museums with communities, and I'm going to leave him to tell you what he's doing in Kerala. We have Subrata Nath, who's the Additional Director General of the National Museum, and he will be telling us what his vision and what they have been doing at the National Museum. Now, for Guillaume André, who is for us right now the only outsider, I will read his CV because he would need introduction to the Indian audience more. He's an archaeologist and an art historian. Guillaume André is currently serving as the chief curator at the Louvre, Abu Dhabi. He is in charge of the medieval as well as the Asian arts. He's particularly involved in creating the museum's collection. Prior to this assignment, he's been responsible for establishing the scientific and cultural programming of Asian arts. Dr. Guillaume began his career at the Musée des Arts Asiatique Guimet, where he has been actively participating for numerous exhibitions in Europe, Asia, and the Gulf. As the co-director for an archaeological mission, he coordinated a large research program that led him to edit several books and publish a number of articles and essays. In France, he created the chair of art history at the Far East at the Institut Catholique de Paris, where he taught for several years and chaired also the program of Far Eastern arts at the École du Louvre. So Guillaume will tell us, and I'm looking forward to the pictures he will show of the Louvre at Abu Dhabi. And of course, then my friend Shikha Jain, with whom I have done a number of very interesting projects, and we are hoping to be doing something very interesting at the Patna Museum in Bihar. Shikha, at the time of the pandemic, is also setting up very, very interesting museums, particularly the Museum of the Word, and I'm sure she will be the best one to talk about her projects. So the idea is, I would now request each of our speakers to make a little presentation, which will be about 5 minutes. After the presentation is over from each of our panelists, we will have a little kind of a discussion within ourselves. And in the last 10 minutes of our long panel, I'll open it to the house, to the people for questions, and we'll be very happy to field them. In case all the questions we will not be able to answer, we will pick up some, because there are so many programs today and Dr. Venu has to go to his next panel. So what we will do is they can be sent to DRONAH or they can be sent to the Visual Arts Gallery, and we will answer the questions and send the responses back to you. So may I request Shri Anjani Kumar Singh to go first, as it were. And thank you for being here.
Greetings from Bihar Museum on International Museum Day. Pandemic has changed life. In fact, Bihar Museum, which was a growing museum and a very young museum, and it was developing as a culture center for the state and the country, got a great setback when suddenly lockdown was announced. In the meantime, we had to think for the people who had become accustomed to coming to that culture center, to participate in events, to see exhibitions, and we also do film, music and other things. So there was a very lively crowd that we used to get every day, every evening. So that was a big setback for the city, for the town. So we had to be creative. And whatever we say, still we have to become a digital, especially the state like Bihar and India. There is a great digital divide still. Of course, things are changing and things are becoming hybrid. But we had to be creative. So we came up with an idea of doing a museum biennale. We thought that if we do that type of activity, people who were participating with us, were engaged with us, friendly with us, other museums also wanted to make presence even during pandemic period. So that was an opportunity. We started with that museum biennale, and Alka ji was our coordinator and curator. And it got a very good response. So that gave us a confidence that even during the period of pandemic, when the whole world is shut, we can communicate, we can see, we can go to each other's museum, we can participate on various topics, we can see what problems the artists are facing, art institutions are facing, that economic crisis. Many of the government museums which are dependent on government support and community donations, they were badly affected. So these are the new questions that came up before us. So we realized that there has to be a hybrid model, and we have to follow that hybrid model, that we will have to be very creative in content making, content creation. We have to have more activities, more type of different type of exhibitions. But I agree with Alka ji, seeing an exhibition in a virtual mode or participating in a webinar is quite different when we meet with each other, when we go and really physically see and experience what we are seeing. So still I feel that for Bihar and India, the model may be hybrid, but that physical part will be very important, because here people come and participate, people share, people enjoy. That you can do sitting in your rooms on your mobile or a tablet or a laptop. That experience is different. And museum is not only intellectual pursuit, that you are doing only intellectual discussion and talking about culture and other things. I want people to come, enjoy, be happy, participate, and those type of things can happen only mostly in physical mode. But now, the new normal, things are changing. So we have to be more creative. We have to find some virtual way of integrating things. How, when things are difficult, how we can move to that. But we will also have to think about the artist and art community, how they are in this changing situation, in this virtual scenario, how they are going to exist and progress. And the last point I want to make is, in this changing mode that we are thinking, and the changing world that will come, will require greater government and community support. And importance of museums will have to be established, and governments will have to be convinced, the community leaders will have to be convinced that to bring, because pandemic has brought that type of pessimistic outlook. So we have to come out from that pessimistic outlook, and museum can play a very big role. And of course, I agree, ultimately it will be a hybrid model. Thank you.
May I request Dr. Venu to next make the presentation, please? Dr. Venu?
Yes. Yes, can you hear me, please?
Yes, very well.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to record my thanks for inviting me to be part of this August panel. I would like to thank the India Habitat Center, particularly Alka Panditji, the Bihar Museum, and DRONAH Foundation for putting this wonderful panel together. I think this is going to be a very stimulating event, which will enlighten us on several new developments in the museum sector. Just a few observations from my part. There are a few strands that are coming up, particularly in the discussions earlier. It is about the future of museums, where a hybrid museum fits into the scheme of things today, the pandemic and its impact on all of us. And for me particularly, Alkaji has been kind enough to point out that I might want to say a few things about community museums, which is the area which I'm interested in these days. Well, just a few observations quickly, and I will not go beyond the time allotted to me. The pandemic has hit the museum sector badly, as we all know. And we know that the cultural sector is often the first sector on which budget cuts are imposed. In Kerala also, we've been reeling under severe budget cuts, but we've tried to make good use of the time that we are closed, improving our documentation and interpretation, completing ongoing projects, so that as and when the pandemic lifts and we welcome visitors back again, we would have a new array of new offerings, which including existing museums, which will be revitalized through better curation, design, interpretation, but also opening several new museums, most of them small, local, and community-led. Investments in the tourism sector for the future, I'm not overly optimistic. The stellar exception to this is the Bihar Museum. The visionary leadership of Mr. Anjani Kumar Singh has seen this brilliant museum being presented to the museum lovers across the world. And although I've seen a bit of the museum earlier, I'm looking forward, sir, to come back to Patna and immerse myself in this wonderful new experience. Other than that, Government of India, I don't know whether many of you are aware that Government of India did make significant investments through the Tribal Affairs Ministry to shine the light on some lesser known aspects in the tribal arena, so to speak. 9 museums focusing attention on tribal freedom fighters and dedicated to the memory of these leaders who fought the British and have not received due recognition. These museums have been funded by Government of India. I know this because I am one of the beneficiaries of that. But a big national museum at Rajpipla, Gujarat is coming up. And some other museums are in capitals like Hyderabad, Ranchi, and Raipur, but also in small towns like mine, which is in Kozhikode, also in Lambasinghi in Andhra Pradesh, Chhindwara in Madhya Pradesh, Senapati in Manipur. So investments like these are going to be far and few between. And I think that our museums, all museums in India, particularly smaller museums like in the States, will have to devise strategies to raise funds and find local means of sustenance for which community involvement and leadership will be paramount. I spoke about the Kozhikode Tribal Museum, which actually gives me an opportunity to expand on these 2 strands, community ownership, as well as the inevitability of hybridizing museums, if I may use the word, in certain circumstances. Our endeavor while conceiving the museum, the tribal museum, was to demolish the patronizing, even racist approach, emphasizing on the primitive and exotic nature of the tribal culture. And we wanted to focus on the rich oral histories and myths. And we wanted to build this through a series of consultations with the tribal community leaders, sitting with them and asking them what would they want to depict, what would they want to project before the world about themselves. And that's why we have taken the route of myths and oral histories. And we also wanted to give importance to contemporary realities. But that's the easy part. The harder part for my museum in Kozhikode is this question: how to relate the stories of resistance, of guerrilla warfare that spanned 2 decades in the 19th century and practically brought the British at that time to their knees. It is here that my museum is taking a leap of faith. We are attempting to bring to life this glorious chapter through a series of digital technology tools, from virtual reality to augmented reality to digital movie making and so on. So the whole idea is to have a new vocabulary, you know, to retell all these stories. Several of our new museums focus on community involvement and community ownership. One more example from our side is the Bastion Bungalow Museum, which is a gallery on living cultures around Fort Kochi. There are 30 odd communities that have made this land their home. And the museum, what we want to do is to showcase each community as they are living today. And we're inviting these communities to own the museum for a period of time so that they can display what they want to show from their lifestyle and from their culture, their cuisine, and the museum forms a platform to do this. To conclude, I think museums of tomorrow will use digital technology in 2 ways. The first, which is already quite common and which is constantly evolving, is the use of technology in order to provide enriching and transformational experiences, connecting objects through virtual media and giving an immersive approach, an immersive appreciation of objects and artifacts in the museum, in the repository. This is vital because to remain relevant and to attract the new generation, we have to introduce new elements of exploration. We have to be playful and provide new avenues for audiences to explore and to reflect. The second aspect of hybrid museums would be, as in my example earlier, is to bring in a whole new vocabulary of interpretation, bringing stories alive through creation of larger than life experiences, dispensing with the aid of objects and artifacts, or even collections, even while living up to the true spirit of museums. Thank you very much. Did you lose me?
Yes, no. I am, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much, Dr. Venu, particularly because of the kind of work you're doing in the community area. India has always had a thriving indigenous population, which has been marginalized for the longest time ever. And I do think these intangible resources of the country really need to be brought alive the way you are doing it, and your idea of making it playful, bringing in the younger people. I think that's really fantastic because, and maybe we can talk about it in our discussion, because this is one area where we as a nation are also lacking. We are not a museum going public for our children, and we need to change that. So these are some points I'm making so that we can carry it forward. But thank you so much for sharing your ideas and also the initiatives and the key drivers of your engine, which seem also exciting. And we're looking forward to seeing all these babies being born.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll now request Guillaume to make a presentation, which we are waiting really to see what a museum like a very young museum like the Louvre Abu Dhabi is doing. So Guillaume, we'd be very, very happy, and I think all of us are looking forward to seeing what kind of magic are you creating in your magical space in Abu Dhabi.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much, Alka, for the invitation, as well as the India Habitat Center the Bihar Museum and the DRONAH Foundation. I'm very glad to participate in the panel and to hear all the panelists on the museum. I will try to share a PowerPoint. I hope it will work. Otherwise, please tell me. Do you see it nicely?
Yes, very well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Indeed, as the first panelist mentioned, it has been quite a year for museums as well as for ourselves as individuals in our own existence, and both these aspects continue to be questioned, and it is with no surprise that threats outside our control lead us to question the roles of museums as they are sources of education, of knowledge, of enjoyment, and research. Museums' essential services may be harder to identify than services provided by schools or hospitals, but they are indeed essential to society. And this is, I will try to, this is the occasion to explore the essential roles of our museums a few months in advance to the 4th anniversary of the Louvre Abu Dhabi. And indeed, as you mentioned, Alka, it's a very young museum that we have here. Here you have a little bit of an idea what happened in the former years, and particularly interesting is, of course, 2020 and 2021. And you see that we have reopened in June, and the 24th of June, and now the new exhibition has opened in February and still receiving visitors. I want to highlight first that Louvre Abu Dhabi was established together with the Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism, and this is essential because there are two guiding roles in our activity: culture and tourism. And this involves, of course, the finding of innovative and accelerated reimagining of our activity in the museum. Our first essential role is to provide a social link through our narrative and displays, and to transport visitors across time and space. And this is the powerful potential of the universal museums in this 21st century, as Louvre Abu Dhabi explores universality through themes that connect all human beings. How are we reimagining the power of art in a world that feels so different today? Our diverse artworks shown together in dialogue reflect interconnected cultures, people, traditions, and beliefs across time, taking also into account that in a particular way at Louvre Abu Dhabi, our narration is based on the direct relation of the visitor to the artwork. And we had to reinvent a proposal which was also durable in time. First, we focused on our collection, and with the documentation of a large number of works which still needed to be studied, receive conservation treatment, and now we are moving forward with preparing the presentation into the galleries. In 2020, we commissioned also what we call the Pulse of Time. You have that on the slide. It's an audiovisual journey through our collections, allowing access to all virtual visitors, guided by the voices of famous people. And there is a second thing that we have commissioned. It's a science fiction audio guide by a collective called Soundwalk Collective. It's called We Are Not Alone, and it's available on the Louvre Abu Dhabi application. And the visitor is invited to follow voices of famous characters as they guide you under the dome. The transportive power of art should be at everyone's fingertips, and this is the idea, and we will continue to reimagine new platforms and mediums to provide with this experience. From the first steps into our galleries, the floor map marks, as you can see on the slide, marks the fact that this region is on the world stage and the powerful interconnectivity. And you have on the slide one of the masterpieces that we show in this first introductory room of the museum, and this is a very beautiful ewer from the 17th century from Gujarat, with a mounting that was made in Italy at the same time during the middle of the 17th century, and is a perfect example to show how we select artworks and how we want to reflect interconnectivity through the artworks themselves. Beyond the classical Western definition of a universal museum, the Louvre Abu Dhabi offers the opportunity to relocate the global narrative of art history. We fulfill a dual commitment to the local community and wider UAE first, and to a global audience in second. Louvre Abu Dhabi is a meeting point geographically and intellectually, situated in a diverse and innovative city. And while we are showcasing the heritage of UAE and the region in a global context, we are privileged to reflect this country's diversity, which is hosting around 200 nationalities. We have built strong ties to our community, and since our reopening in June 2020, UAE National topped the index of visitors' nationalities by far, and followed by Indian nationals and Filipino nationals. Despite the challenges of COVID-19, we have remained fully open since the end of June last year, and our returning visitors have multiplied. Our collection is also anchored in the region, and its strength drawing on a balance between exceptional loans for major French museums, especially the Musée du Louvre, and a combination of our own growing collection with significant loans from regional and UAE institutions. Regional artworks that you can have also as an example on the screen are revealing interconnected trade, ritual, and artistic tradition that are anchoring our narrative. And you see how it is displayed into our galleries. This is in this showcase in the middle, a magnificent loan from Dhabi Museum that we managed to bring into this first gallery of the Louvre Abu Dhabi. And you see here one of the artwork, which is very much influenced by also what was happening during the archaeological times in India, and painted ceramic. One of the examples of the loans from the regional institutions, this one from the UAE. Finally, this leads me to one last essential role as a museum, our social responsibility to our local community. A few days ago, we invited visitors to share 8 wishes transformed into what we call a calligraffiti. This is graffiti in the shape of calligraphy, and artworks were produced by young artists. And we have then reopened public events with constraints, of course, but this is an opportunity to participate in our collective resilience, whether from when practicing kayak around the museum or through a yoga class. As you can see, that every week we have yoga classes under the dome, and it's creating memories together over a meal or dreaming under our iconic dome. In this year, we'll continue to focus on our place and time in the UAE, and we will lend our platform and spaces to the new voices and homegrown talents in contemporary art. Local audiences will continue to be at the heart of our programming, and it is through art, through voices of the past and future, that connections between people and cultures are strengthened. And these are our promises as Global Abu Dhabi contributes to societal development and to recover and reimagine in 2021, featuring the ICOM's own program this year, which is named The Future of Museum, Recover and Reimagine. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Guillaume, for your presentation and showing us some of the very interesting objects, beautiful treasures that you have, and most importantly, the architecture, which is deeply immersive and experiential. And very interesting to know that post-pandemic too, there are people, large number of people coming to your museum, and you are continuing with, doing new exhibitions as well. Thank you very much. May I now request Subroto Nath, the Additional Director General of the National Museum, Delhi, to tell us what is happening in this very vibrant, where there are so many treasures of Indian art and antiquities. What is happening in the National Museum?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the panelists and moderators. Special thanks to Mr. Eric and Madam Alka for organizing this panel discussion, which I feel it will immensely help others to understand the concept of hybrid museum and what the pandemic situation has been doing to our museums. Wish you all International Museum Day 2021 in a challenging time, second year in continuation, I must say. And hopefully next year we'll have a much more cheerful International Museum Day 2021. Now, actually, before I start my presentation is broadly split into two parts. One part is the pandemic situation and the museums and how National Museum is catering to it, and second part is the hybrid museum and what National Museum is doing. So basically, I will share my screen and thank you. Let me see. Is it visible to everybody? Second, on this International Museum Day, I would like to pay homage to our Dr. Vinay Kumar Sahai, a Deputy Curator, National Museum, who succumbed to COVID on 8th of May 2021. And we lost a very learned colleague of National Museum. So I would like to pay homage and we fondly remember Dr. Sahai. Now, the first part of this, my presentation, is pandemic and museums. Now, pandemic is something like it is beyond our disaster management copybook or beyond anything. So we don't have any SOPs or any plan to deal with the pandemic, but still we have been dealing with it. And let us see what the National Museum has done and what is the ideas that we have gathered from this pandemic situation. Pandemic has changed the museums all over, made us to think beyond physical space, and also to remain connected with the people and the communities. We have to think beyond the physical space. The new normal for museums will be, even for the near future, is the more and more people would like to visit museum virtually or online. Being online, of course, Madam Pandey has already mentioned it, that being online allows museum and galleries to democratize their collections, opening up their possibilities. Museums, that's why, are having more digital engagement through events, learning, virtual tours, and online exhibitions. And during this current pandemic era, all these things have already been tried and tested by many museums worldwide. New methods are being developed, new methods are being invented for community engagement, for returning to them to museum sites, social media. As one of the panelists has already mentioned, that the Indians are not museum pro people. So we don't go to museum like the European Union, other countries. So we have to find innovative ways to keep the communities engaged, keep their interest live. Museum So changing role of the museum, we have to now redefine museum as a knowledge center, not being just an institution where the objects are displayed. We have to redefine ourselves as a knowledge center, and we have to reposition them and then keep the access open for the repository and learning center to the online. Develop strong community connect to social media than ever done to site visitors. Online and virtual exhibitions will become more and more relevant. So basically what we have learned from this pandemic, that necessity is the mother of invention. So we have learned, we have invented many things that we did not do it even 10 years before that. Museum professionals are now appreciate the need of getting more adapted to digital space. Self-learning has become more important because people are working from home. So basically there will be nobody to teach them or to guide them every hour or every 5 minutes. So self-learning has become more important. The crisis have helped team building. So basically now at the National Museum, we have created different teams. All the teams are working together. And now it has shattered the hierarchy, because in a social media or in a team software, everybody is admin, something like that. More appreciation for human values. So basically this COVID, especially the second wave of the COVID, has given us more wisdom to appreciate human values. Now, another point that I have received in our intro of this presentation, brief of this event, is that actually what are the learning from the pandemic and what are the future of the museums? If you see in India, most of the museums are in the government sector. So the government sector museums are getting grants by the government, grants from the government. But in the other countries, as UNESCO has already said, as mentioned sometime last year, that 85% of the museums are closed and 15% of them will never open because of the fund crisis. So basically door attendance likely to be down by 50 to 60%. This may happen for the next 2 to 3 years. So basically we have to reposition museums as online event center in collaboration with online event managers, something like what Bihar Museum is doing. We can have online guided tours, 30 minutes, 60 minutes at museum website, mobile partner sites where they can pay. We can have scheduled events. Right now we are having the talk to curators is like something like free. In a social media, you can interact with the curators, or we can have a curated tour free of cost. But this can be done with a revenue sharing model. Virtual exhibitions, right now it is free everywhere. It can be given a free preview and then pay as you go. You can have online paid short-term certificate courses that we are already doing in National Museum. So basically this is something that the private museums, where they are really facing a revenue crisis, can consider that the future revenue model is going to erupt from this current pandemic. Now another point that I want to flag is that what are the different skill sets that we have to learn, or we are already learning, or the museum professionals they have to learn. Especially experiences from the National Museum says that we have to research papers. All the museum professionals are to write their case studies, cataloging, publishing. They have to curate contents from the online exhibition sitting at home in collaboration with agencies like Google Art and Culture or other agencies. They have to develop online exhibition. There are many platforms available for online exhibitions. They have to curate virtual tours, launch mobile-based audio app, and they recurate existing galleries, change the labels, change the wall text, change the narratives. All these things can be done working from home, and these are the new skill sets that are become necessary for the museum professionals. Now coming back quickly to the part 2 of my presentation, which is hybrid museum. That hybrid museum is the topic of this event for this panel discussion, and I would like to tell what the National Museum is doing towards this hybrid museum initiatives. And I can tell you that we started these initiatives sometime in the early 2019 when we collaborated with some of the startup and the tech agencies to create some kind of a digital immersive experiences. So basically, if you see the hybrid museum, that I can broadly categorize as on-site hybrid initiatives, where an interactive and digital experience within the physical galleries. And a digital gallery or an on-site experiential museum. These are the on-site exhibition, on-site hybrid museum initiatives. I think the Louvre Museum has already has done, and Bihar Museum and other, all the new museums, they are doing this on-site hybrid museum initiatives. And there are also online hybrid museum initiatives where they are dedicated online museums. National Museum already done. There's an nmvirtual.in. It is a, we can say, online avatar of the National Museum of India. They are not the virtual tours of the existing galleries. Virtual tours are different. They are the photography or 3D or 360-degree photography. We can also give access to the public, the digital repository. This is already available in this Museum of India portal. We can create museum experience online. We have created a web page called Museum at Home, available in the National Museum website, where the visitors can have some kind of an experience visiting the National Museum. Of course, the community engagement, leveraging social media, curatorial tours, interactive events. Now, I'll just show you a glimpses of each of them very quickly because the time is running out fast. But this is the interactive experience, on-site hybrid experiences. And as you can see, these are being used as a teaching aid and also to create more experience, learning experience. So this is basically, this is being kept in the Harappan gallery, this too and the Harappan gallery, and this is being used for the school teaching program. You can see two interested visitors are browsing this kiosk to learn more. This is once again, this is situated in the Bronze Gallery where the father is teaching his daughter about some of the bronze artifacts of National Museum. This is again, once again, a very crowded scene, but it is very, very pleasure to see this crowded scene where the students are writing notes and the teacher is using the hybrid experience or the kiosk, the digital interactive kiosk to teach the children. This is what we have done, I think probably the first time in India. We started in 2019 with one of the startup companies in Delhi. I think Bihar Museum is also collaborated with that company. And now we have created a virtual experiential kind of an experience in our late medieval gallery. This was installed sometime in the middle of 2019, where you can actually see a 360-degree view of any object lying in that gallery. So we have got around 60 odd late medieval gallery objects being scanned, and people can see from whatever angle they want to see, they can learn more about it. This is once again a Harappan gallery. The father is sitting, the son is looking at it. This is the coin gallery where you can know about each and every coin displayed in that gallery, more details in this interactive kiosk. Yeah, this is the one, probably the first one is being created in India. This is the virtual experiential museum on Ajanta, and it is a very big project. And you can see, but this virtual experiential museum is fully commissioned, and you can see the DG UNESCO madam is having a look at the augmented reality. The whole museum is tab-based museum, tab-based gallery. The tab will navigate you to the whole museum. So this is one kind of an experience that probably no other museum in India is currently having, and probably this is also very unique in the world. But this is a perfect example of the hybrid museum inside a physical museum, traditional museum like the National Museum. Now again, coming back to the online activities that we have created a virtual avatar of the National Museum, which is available in nmvirtual.in. Launched, shared with this exhibition last year on 30th November during the SCO online exhibition. This is available online. You can see on your desktop and laptops, where you can see, you can actually feel the experience of having visited all this museum. But these are not the physical galleries. These are completely virtually curated. Virtually curated means that we cannot find this exhibition anywhere in the world. These are all virtual creation. These are all available. This is another one that we have collaborated with varamuseum.org. I think Bihar Museum is also collaborating with varamuseum.org, where you can visit online and then see details of this object. These are all the National Museum objects, all 3D scanned. so that you can have a 360-degree view, you can rotate, you can know much more about it. This is an effort to reach out to the public. Some panelists has rightly mentioned that museum will come to your home. You don't need to go to the museum. So these are all the effects of that museum coming to your home or museum at home. This is the online repository effort by the government portal, where we have uploaded around 90,000 objects, and visitors can browse this site and see about more than thousands, hundred thousands of objects from all the museums of India. So you can click on the particular object, see the details, and all the repositories are available with this website, with the repository, so that visitors can see it. They need not come to museum and stand in front of it. But once again, somebody has rightly pointed out that hybrid museum will not be able to replace the physical museum. Physical museum do remain, because all these are physical assets. These physical assets are to be maintained by a physical museum. All these physical assets are to be conserved, are to be properly secured, displayed by a physical exhibition, physical museum. So physical museum shall remain, will remain, and will definitely not fizzle out actually in the wake of the technology and other things. So these are some of the social media community connect kind of a thing, that museum concert at home. This is a hairdo challenge, where you do your hair as per a sculpture. Then you say about some of the object we post in the website, and we ask people to share their knowledge about it, and you can see the people have given a lot of ideas, lot of stories about it. But this is the curatorial tour, and this has got 50,000 visits in 15 days. So this is a curatorial visit. Visit means that a guided tour of 9 minutes. We have launched a program last year called Museum in 9 minutes, where a particular gallery is being depicted in 9 minutes video. And we post this on the social media and our website also. And all these videos are clocking tens of thousands of hits in next 7 days or 8 days. This is another collaboration with Google Art and Culture that we have done, Life in Miniature. I request the panelists on the other audiences to kindly have a look at it. But this is a digital version of the miniature painting of National Museum collection. And of course, that there are a lot of AI, artificial intelligence actions are there. Lot of immersive realities are also there. I am not telling what is there in this particular website, but I mostly welcome everybody. I request everybody to see at this Life in Miniature sites. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Subroto Nathji. And now I will request Shikha Jain from DRONAH to make her presentation, and we'll open it then to the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Alka Pandey. I realize that time is short. I'm also the last presenter, and I think most of what had to be said is already said. So I'll try to make it short. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I am just going to be very brief on, my perspective on the hybrid museum, which seems to be like an essential sort of typology that we need to accept today. And it comes from my experience of working on various museums. In fact, even during the pandemic time, when the lockdown started last year in March, most of the museums closed down, and I wondered whether we would really be working on any of our sites. But these are the 8 sites across India that we continued working on. Some got inaugurated and some are still ongoing, and in 7 different states. And also in terms of ownership, some of them are under the Ministry of Culture and the central government. Some are under state governments, and 2 of them are under private foundations. So it sort of made me realize, the diverse perspective of various stakeholders and how museums, were surviving in these difficult times. So I'm just going to give you a quick glimpse of that and what the learnings could be for a hybrid museum from that. beginning from the City Palace Museum at Udaipur, where we've been working for almost now 18 to 20 years. And, looking at this beautiful site, that without a physical presence, how could you experience, no amount of videos or virtual tours would actually replace the experience. But right from March 2020, when they went into lockdown, the museum started looking at digital mode, which was something that it was not accepting before. But suddenly they tuned it, there were dialogues about the pandemic, digital future of museums, how to experience the palace, and virtual tours were already launched in March 2020. And they continue to, throughout the year, they continued to survive partially on this virtual mode, though they had opened up the museum and they started getting footfall, even up to 4,000 a day. In the months of December and January, but suddenly again, of course, it's back to closing down. So this makes these museums realize that probably the hybrid mode of virtual and physical has to be accepted for long term and maybe forever by the museums. And that's a learning that which initially last year we were not accepting, but slowly I think with the second wave and what we are going through now, museums have come to terms with that. The Rajasthan State Archives Museum, which was going on around that time, and the site was half done, but they continued, and during as soon as the lockdown allowed, it opened up, they could get people back together. IGNCA was there to conserve the artifacts here. This is a 18 feet plus long manuscript. It's one of the only document museum probably in India for the first time, because most of the archives are not yet into full-fledged museums in India. But the Rajasthan State Archives took this initiative and they launched it in August 2020. What was good was that at the back end, they could do conservation. There is interpretation of this Purandar Treaty, 18 feet long, which is between Shivaji Maharaj and Aurangzeb, and the display is good. But the challenge was, in a lockdown, if a museum is launched, how many visitors and how do you get your footfall? So it was essential for them to look at a virtual walkthrough. So this was specially created with the launch also, where you could actually access the documents gallery, the other collection on copper plates, and you can actually go down it's on their website. So you can actually access the entire museum, walk through the museum, and also look at the artifacts and get details of the manuscripts that are being displayed. So they did it as a supplement because it was realized, that it's essential. Similarly, Bapu Museum in Vijayawada was another one that was inaugurated in September 2020, but again, using digital modes on augmented reality and virtual reality, where, the sculptures could talk about themselves, and, each description would be there for each sculpture. And lastly, most recent of our museum, where Dr. Pandey is also involved as the curator, was the John Marshall Museum and Buddhist Park Interpretation Center at Sanchi, where, aspects like this holographic projection of Sanchi stupa being recreated, or even projection on water screen. Unfortunately, because it's a Buddhist cultural park, so it's more open, and it's in situations like the pandemic, these are the kind of spaces that sometimes become more used. So what my concluding points are that the future museum truly, we would have to accept sooner or later that the hybrid mode is probably the most sustainable mode in long term for museums. But the digital and virtual space creation, it's essential that we have both kinds of spaces. And because digital is an important tool, it's not only for communicating or for, interpretation strategy, but also to document and to conserve collections. It's very important record. The digital record stays with us for a longer time and can be open access. What is also important is balancing the physical. Can we have the audio off for everyone, please? Okay, just last few points. The balancing the physical with digital is important. Not every museum needs to be totally digital, totally physical. There has to be a percentage ratio, and each museum is unique. So we really need to work out how much of it needs to be physical and how much to be digital. And that is a very judicious selection, so that we ensure that the significance of the collection is not compromised while doing it digital, and it's not just drama without any content. And lastly, the museum professionals and maintenance staff, they need to be very conversant with the digital, because wherever we have implemented digital, we realize that after 2 years, it's the technology is outdated or the staff is not able to maintain it. So it's not just saying that we have digital, but how to look at it in terms of long-term maintenance, and not by technical, IT people, because this is content related. So museum professionals need to get involved in that. And that is one of the biggest challenge with the digital mode. And lastly, the museum managers need to evolve some kind of revenue model. We have not done that yet. Last year, we started talking about this kind of model, but everyone thought that we'll get back to the normal, which has not happened and may not happen in future. So we really need to now work on that revenue model, which would prove that hybrid museum is a sustainable model. Thank you. And over to you, Dr. Pandey. Your sound is not.
Before I invite the questions from the audience, I would like to thank each one of the panelists who have taken time out and also put in their thoughts and shared it with all of us. I would like to thank Anjani ji, I would like to thank Venu ji, I would like to thank Subroto Nath ji, I would like to thank Guillaume, Andre from Abu Dhabi Louvre, and Shikha for putting everything and bringing in different ways of thinking, different ways of working together in the same collective space. The fact that the hybrid museum is probably a general conclusion which seems to be the voice of the people at the moment of all the experts, and also the concern with revenue generating, concern with the manpower, also understanding technology, taking the museum to the people and inculcating a museum going dialogues through probably outreach programs, online programs. So there are a lot of concerns, there are a lot of challenges, but the point is that each one of the experts is deeply engaged, deeply empathetic, and deeply committed to the dissemination of the treasures within a museum and the changing nature of the museum. So thank you very much. I would now like to field any questions. I know I can see a lot of questions on the chat box. I'll just take, I think, 3 right now, 3 or 4. I'll begin with this question which says, why is it that though Indian museums are going digital, yet they do not have an internal digital team and have burdened their curator with this task? Why we do not have a digital documentation, digital department? This has come from Samvida Rai. And also to say, in today's context, the real and virtual are syncretic. The Bihar Biennale perhaps has achieved much by way of stressing and introducing the point. So, okay, that's one good thing for the Bihar Biennale. Anjani ji, would you like to take this question? That why is it that Indian museums are going digital, yet they do not have an internal digital team and have burdened their curator with this task? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you have not, but how are you going to deal with the necessity of the digital and the requirement of people? Like you said, that in Bihar, people are used to an aesthetic experience. How are you going to deal with this?
This is a very important question. what happened in post-independent period, if you see in India, because no new museum with large virtual content, modern technology, world standard, they could not come. So if you see post-independent era, whatever museum came, mostly they came in private sector, they did something. But in government sector where large museums were supposed to come or should have come, if those museums had come, then museum professionals were required. So what happened, because no new museum was coming, so no large scale training of museum professionals, not only in virtual content development, even for good quality curation, that did not develop. So museum professionals did not develop in India because no good museum came in post-independence period. Even earlier it was a storehouse of artifacts. Before independence in India, the museums were a storehouse of artifacts. So people were going and seeing. But when the things changed in the world, things did not change. Unfortunately, now because new museums are coming, new initiatives are coming, we are interacting with each other and requiring, and now pandemic, there is no other way also, you have to have those elements. So that component in museum professionals is absent in most of the museums, including Bihar Museum. We badly require a good team, a very good team who can develop good digital content, international standard, because we want to do it international standard. But we hardly have people in India. Now we are getting few people coming up, but there are few professionals, many takers. So that problem is going to come. It's a very serious problem, and we are aware of this problem. We want to sort it out. We want to develop a good digital team in Bihar Museum.
Thank you, Anjani ji. Nilanjana, does that kind of answer your question, because you had posed that question?
Yes, it answers. Thank you.
There is a question from Padmini Balaram, and I think maybe Subroto Nath ji can answer this. She's asking that how would the collection be affected if it is shifted to a temporary place to create a new museum? Would some of the collection not get damaged or lost? And how do you see the new museum? How would it add to the existing museum? And what would it lose, such as its old building and some of the collection? So since you are also a public museum and you may be affected by shifting processes and things, how does a museum in India deal with protecting their collection? Because I think this is one area where all of us, I think most of the public museums in India are not very well geared in their storage and storeroom. I see a lot of private museums abroad and private galleries abroad are very particular about their storage. But somehow, I suppose, because we have so much, so would you like to deal with that, Mr. Nath?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Pandey. I would like to answer to the previous question also, because National Museum is having a digital documentation unit for the last 3-4 years. So basically, we are implementing a project under the CDAC program, which is called Jatan program, and as a part of that program, we have built the capacity of our museum professionals in digital documentation, and we have a dedicated team. We have a museum digitization unit with tens of museum professionals working in that. So National Museum currently do not have any issue in the digital documentation. And so far as this platform and the online exhibitions are being done, these are being done in collaboration with the agencies, which are the startup agencies. Now, coming back to the second question, that I'd not like to comment directly on the shifting of this object and other thing, because this is a very preliminary kind of an issue. But definitely, I will tell you the storage and the conservation issue. The National Museum was established in 1960s, and as all of us are aware, that at that point of time, National Museum did not have any collection. All these collections have been gathered later on. So basically, National Museum, when somebody comes to see our storage, they say, okay, the storage is not good, storage is not adequate. But we have to also realize that the storage system was designed in 1960, and After that, for next 20 to 30 years, we have gathered our objects, and definitely we have a storage issue. Any new museum is coming, any new museum will have a clear concept of the how many objects are to be stored, because in National Museum, as some of us may be knowing, that we are having about more than 200,000 objects, 2 lakh objects, but our display is only about 3 to 4%. So 97% objects are basically lying in the storage. So the storage is a big issue in the National Museum because of the storage, insufficient storage. But National Museum is also having a dedicated conservation laboratory and well-equipped big conservation laboratory. So basically, even though the objects are in the store, we are regularly getting them checked, we are getting them conserved. So storage and the conservation issues are not so critical in National Museum. Of course, there are manpower issues, there are capacity building issues, as somebody has pointed out in the chat box, that we don't have museum professionals in the conservation and the other area. That is perfectly true. And also, like other museums in India, like any other government museums in India, we are having our shortfall in the manpower, but still we are able to manage this. We are able to take care of our objects, take care of our collections adequately as per the global norms.
Thank you. I think Venuji has left, but we send a question to him because you are asking, how is it that we make sure that with community-run museums, that a dialogue is maintained, especially when most of these communities might not have access to digital resources? Also, can the museums help communities in time like these? We will put this question to Venu Vasudevan, and he will answer it, and we will let you know. I think there's a gentleman whose mic is not muted yet. Now, there is a question which has come very specifically for Anjani ji. This is from Abhash. He's founder of Education for Poor. I request to Anjani sir, Bihar government, organize online quiz and related competition to museum. Today, all institutions are closed to students. So students take part in online competition and students still remain depression free. So that's something.
It's a very good idea. Certainly, we will communicate separately, and it's a good idea. We should do this. It should not be difficult.
So now there is another question which is come from, this is from Subodh Sharma. He's saying it to everybody. Archaeology and museology courses should be enriched with museum-related IT knowledge. So I think Subroto Nath ji has already said that they are starting all this. The process has started. And when one museum starts it, the others will start, following it too. So I hope that will answer your question, Subodhji. Now, there is another question that in today's context, the real and virtual are syncretic, one an extension of the other, in which case do we need to qualify museums as hybrid? The Bihar Biennale perhaps has achieved much by way of stressing and introducing the point. So who would like to take that question? I think Anjani ji, aap lijiye.
No, that second part I answered. That first part she is more competent because she is doing a lot on virtual museums. Yes.
Would you like to answer that?
Yeah. I guess, the question is whether we need to call it hybrid or just accept it as part of technology, right?
She says that one is an extension of the other. The real and virtual are syncretic. Yeah. In which case, do we need to qualify museums as hybrid?
Well, yeah, that is something one can debate on. I would say, we accept it as syncretic today, but I have found, a lot of resistance in museums which are primarily on collections based, and they tried digital in the beginning and they realized that it's not working because the visitors who come are actually, even for city Palace Udaipur. Initially, we tried augmented reality, virtual reality, but it didn't function because the palace itself and the collections were so, and that's what visitors were interested in. So I think the reason why we call it, I said, hybrid, judicious selection of that digital. It's syncretic, but how to tie up that, how to have that marriage together so that it's an ideal museum. And that is why we've used the term. But of course, whether we use the term or not, it's accepted that both need to be balanced. So I think the second part, Gigi would answer in the Bihar Museum Biennale, which I mean is right that it's successfully, but I think Alka, you are the one who called it hybrid, and that's how the term came up. So
yeah, because initially we were to do it hybrid. We were to have a physical opening, we were to have a physical walk, we were supposed to be opening up the thing for a week, and then because of the pandemic we had to go virtual completely. So all I can say is, I think all these challenges and difficult periods turn out and bring out something, a new model, a new way of looking, a new experiment, and it's like a laboratory really. So I think the Bihar model has been a very interesting model, and it is now up to Anjani ji to take it forward and to see what they can do, because he's always told me that we are not ever going to be short of funds. We have the ideas and we have the desire to do something. So probably this is a time of great reflection and rethinking, and I'm sure a person like him with his vision, his mind is clicking away onto what they would do once the lockdown is open, and I leave it to him to present his views.
No, you are right. This Museum Biennale was a surprise to us also. We never thought earlier, when we were planning to do it purely physical, it has a lot of logistics involved. So virtual made it sad, but virtual also opened that Museum Biennale to many more countries, many places. Anybody can participate, any museum can participate. Earlier in our old concept, where we had thought that it will be physical, it was not anticipated, because you had to transport all those artifacts, bring, exhibit, display, and do all that. But once it became, though under compulsion, it became virtual, completely virtual. We wanted hybrid. But then we realized suddenly it opened the door also. Suddenly we started getting reviews from Museum Australia or some country, some far-flung country, different countries, that they also want to participate. They also want their museum tours, virtual tours. So, that was a boon in disguise also. That was a good. So now next time when we will do, we are going to give very good balance of that hybrid that you are saying. Both, how ideal type of, we will try, because now with this mode, we can reach to a much wider world. So that experience we now have, that we will use.
I'm going to end with this question. This is a question, I'll just tell you where it comes from, but interesting question. At this point, this is not very hard to implement the concept of hybrid museums in urban areas and starting off digital activities even in an off period like a COVID-19 lockdown. But what about the museums in rural areas, which there are in majority in India? How to connect people from such areas in online activities during lockdown, in spite of unavailability of digital services, devices, or knowledge in that area. Hybrid museums are the future of museums. Then how can we involve those areas where hybrid museums would not be involved? I'd like to ask each of the three panelists to answer this. Shikha, would you like to start? Then we can ask Subrata Nath ji, and then we can ask Anjani.
You mean how to reach the rural?
Yeah, because what this question is that, in urban areas, the hybrid panel can work even in an off period like COVID-19. But what about the museums in rural areas, which are in majority in India? How do you connect with people from such areas in online activities during lockdown, in spite of unavailability of digital devices or knowledge systems in that area?
I think, to one point, we are underestimating our rural, areas, because from my knowledge, what I have, the kind of activities and the Zoom meetings that are happening there, I just got to know of this, in a village in Tumkur in Rajasthan, 2 days back, there was a gathering, Zoom gathering of about 200 only women, local women getting together just to do their puja and prayers. So I think, smartphone is everywhere, and even in the pandemic time, you see the kind of rural, like the clippings that we are getting, about rural people communicating from that level is very vast. So I think it's just a potential to be tapped. And ideally, Dr. Venu would have given his comments, because he's actually looking at community and rural museums.
Yeah.
But I feel, everywhere our rural population is very conversant with the use of mobile phone, and there are these meetings. There is a parallel network that we are not aware of, but it's present there, and we need to tap into that to build our rural museums.
Vishwanath?
Yeah, I fully agree with Madam Shikha Jain. Last year, we launched a program which is called a community engagement of your tribal traditions. And secondly, we have got a lot of videos coming from the northeastern part of the India, not the rural area from the India. So basically, the social media and the Android phone and some of the chat software are doing wonder in this rural area. So we can leverage that. Especially the Facebook, everybody is looking at the Facebook. Even the Instagram is also very popular, especially after this online schooling and online college teaching started from the last year. People are getting accustomed to this online kind of a thing, like Zoom or the Google Meet meeting. I think the museum can take that leverage to create some kind of a structure to reach out to the rural people.
Anjali ji, you have so much experience. You've launched so many things in rural areas, from Kilkari to education programs. Do you see the Bihar Museum reaching out to people in rural areas through online platforms?
Reaching out, Bihar Museum reaching out to these communities and these type of institutions like Kilkari and others, that is already we have successfully done to some extent. The problem is little different. Like we have our district museums, and they are like community museums, and they will be around 30 in number in Bihar. So this question gives me an idea that we should digitize that collection also and make those collections available. Of course, Bihar Museum and Patna Museum collections are available and will be available in a better way. But this question gives me an idea also that I should now digitize my district museums, those community museums, and make them accessible to the local community.
Has Guillaume left? Is he around?
He's here.
So, okay, Guillaume, would you like to just make a closing remark on how you are now dealing with the pandemic? You told me that you are starting new exhibitions. Are you going back to being normal?
We are aiming to, because this is also the question of how to bring some money to the museum, to sell tickets. For the moment, nothing is planned to bring funds to the museum instead of if there is no visitor. So we for the time being we are aiming to be back to normal. This is not the case yet, but also the tourism field is getting to be developed more and more the following years in UAE.
When I visited your museum, I saw that digital was not a problem. You were already very up to date with technology. You had a very, very active children's center. So you were already, you're already springboarded to the new normal in your museum.
Indeed.
what is the kind of challenge that you are foreseeing at your museum, or the pandemic really hasn't created a big dent in programming and outreach, except for the fact that there are not enough physical people?
Yes, the issues that was created by the pandemic is that our model is built both on the local visitors, but also on the tourism that it's relying on the tourism and tourists which are coming from other continents, India, China, etc. So we had 1 million of visitors during the second year in 2019. Then it reduced drastically in 2020, and then it's starting again. But the fact that we are missing this international tourists is a great loss for the museum. But it's also the opportunity, as all said, that to develop the local audience, and we should see that as an opportunity as well. But in terms of hybrid model, of course, there is no issue with bringing. I mean, in Abu Dhabi, it's well developed. The business is well developed already, so it's not an issue of bringing the digital into the museum. It's already done for some part, but the idea is also that the concept of the museum itself is to maintain this strong relationship between the visitor and the artwork itself, and the digital is only the channel to allow the understanding of the visitor. It's not the aim of having a fully digital museum, or to have a visit which is mainly digital. The aim is to bring the visitor to the reality of the artwork in its materiality also.
Thank you for that. And now I will just end with one comment of Radhi Padamji saying that the people in South India, artists are more savvy than the artists in North India. And Viraj Anand has asked me whether the renovation at the cost of losing what stood before in order to create something new better, especially in this time when people are confined to their homes, asking from a more philosophical perspective so that we can avoid getting into the weeds of current public discourse. I can only say one thing: you win some, you lose some. You definitely lose the rasanubhuti when you're not standing in front of an object of beauty, of historical antiquity. The dialogue is missing, but something is better on a digital. At least you are viewing, at least you are seeing, at least you are thinking. So I think that's how life is. You lose some, you win some. And I think the human spirit is very resilient. We are all very hopeful and people who are looking towards creating new systems of new knowledge. So thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you for this most wonderful and interactive audience that we have. There are a lot of questions, a lot of comments, and a lot of praise which has been showered on this panel by the audience. I see that in the chat box. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Alka.